Joe Hockey, post-budget, has gone all austere, honest.
Yes.
Starting with his attitude now on the disability scheme. Let's hear from Joe Hockey.
I'm afraid what the government's promising is not being delivered, and that is a cruel hoax. From my perspective, I will not make a commitment to something I cannot fund. We will not go to the next election with a grab bag of big promises. My colleagues, a number of whom are here, will not be raising expectations that cannot be paid for. We are absolutely determined to live within our means, and we'll have genuine savings to achieve that goal.
Now, is that at the very least a different emphasis from Tony Abbott?
Yes. It is on the disability scheme, absolutely it is. And I think my sense of what Joe Hockey was trying to achieve there was two things. One is taking another opportunity to telegraph a message pretty loudly to the colleagues on his side of politics about don't be bringing me your big spending proposals because there just ain't any money in the kitty.
I know the numbers and they're not good.
And the second thing is that I think they are live to a sense that the public do want to know more about how they're going to make all these things add up, because there are promises pulling in very different directions. If you're going to lop off two big sources of revenue streams in the carbon and the mining tax, and you're promising to fund a whole lot of other things that you've already made graven commitments to, I think punters really do want some clearer answers on that front, and this is the start of sort of trying to craft a message about the hard trade-offs that need to be made if you're going to...
This absolutely does fit the Bill Kelty advice. You know, it doesn't have to be politics. Don't make it any harder on yourself and tell the truth.
On the other hand, within the Liberal Party, there's very strong support for doing something about the disability in favour of the disability scheme, and of course it can be funded. You fund it by cutting in a responsible way, by cutting somewhere else. And Joe Hockey would know there's plenty of areas where you can cut the budget. There's very lax means test still on some things. If Joe Hockey hadn't backed the Labor government's increase in super from 9 to 12, that would have given you enough funds in terms of the savings on the tax concessions to fully pay for the disability scheme. There are options. There are options. If you want to do it badly enough, you can do it in a responsible way.
I think there's a political risk in this stance on the NDIS specifically, because a lot of families out there are at breaking point trying to get basic care and services for disabled people in their family.
And there's no distinction between Liberal and Labor as to who that hits, which families that hits.
Phil, what do you think Joe Hockey was up to this week?
Well, what we've just discussed, but don't discount the competitive tensions inside the coalition. I mean, there's 4 or 5 people lining up for Treasurer and Finance Minister should they win the election. And Joe's head's going to be on the block in the election campaign if there's a massive great hole in their costings, like last time, and he's not going to take the fall for that. So I think he's signalling very early and very, very. This is not the first time he gave that speech in Britain on entitlements, and this all may lack consistency and so forth. But I think he's putting a note out there that he's going to be Mr. Austere, and that's a sop to the right of the Liberal Party, and the economic hardheads are a bit worried about Tony Abbott's, dare I say, DLP tendencies, sort of tendency towards populism. And Joe, you find a way to pay for it, I'm off to find something else to talk about. And so I think there's a bit of self-preservation in there for Hockey, as much as there is.
Having said that, there's nothing on that Tony Abbott spending list, though, Brian, is that he's about to walk away from, including the parental leave scheme.
No, but you can fund it if you want to, but he doesn't want to say how he's going to fund it, because...
Well, you can fund it by putting it on the companies.
That one is too. But for the most part, yes, they don't want to say how they're going to fund it because someone's going to be the loser out of it. So it's...
There's also a federal government employees out there that'll have to be eligible for it as well. So I suppose there is a government cost. For the parental leave scheme.
Absolutely. Well, the main cost is they pay less tax on superannuation than they do on income. So if you're moving from 9 to 12, there's a massive loss of income tax. I think it's $12.6 billion over the first 8 years they've given away.